changes in the air?
Well, that's true too. We've got some big changes coming up, and you'll hear them on the air.
Oh, right, boss. Go ahead.
As I was saying, changes are coming, and you'll hear them on the air beginning Monday, June 24th, here on American Family Radio.
So, do they affect me? I mean, are we cool here? I mean, we're cool, right?
The reason you should be skeptical about any individual poll is because you never know where the sample comes from.
Joe Biden was up 9 points. It's the same poll that had Andrew Gillum, my good friend, up 7 points. I mean, we can't take anything for granted, and we're not calling him Governor Gillum tonight.
Canceling student debt, making public college free. That's Elizabeth Warren's big idea.
You know, I don't think Democrats have much to be excited about.
I tell people in my state when they ask me, why are you a black female Democrat fighting for life? I say, because I'm a Christian first. There's no blood more innocent than an unborn child who's never sinned, who never knew sin.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Howdy, and welcome to Free for All Friday on Focal Point on American Family Radio. I am Brian Fisher, your congenial, convivial, amiable, and effervescent host.
As always.
Glad to have you in the conversation today. Free for All Friday. A couple of programming notes. I'm going to be filling in for Abraham Hamilton III again this afternoon on the Hamilton Corner, 5 p.m., right where you are. Just stay tuned, 5 p.m. You'll have a chance to hear me sitting in for the inestimable Abraham Hamilton III. Nobody can do the job that Abe does.
What does that mean?
What, inestimable?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a really good.
It sounded, yeah.
It's a word that just sounds really good.
I'm glad
I think it's connected to the word for estimate. Maybe you could even look this up.
I don't even know how to spell it.
You can't even estimate the value and the brilliance of Abe Hamilton. He is inestimable.
Okay.
You couldn't even guess and come up with a number.
I couldn't even get close enough for spell checker to spell check that.
Yes. All right. Anyway, and also Abe is at a family life conference being held, sponsored by Urban Family Communications here in Tupelo at Hope Church on McCullough Boulevard. Not too late to slip on over there and take part in the conference week and be going tonight and all day tomorrow. A quick word. I want to do one follow-up comment on this Supreme Court decision on the cross, the Bladensburg cross. Talked about it extensively yesterday. I have a column up at afa.net on the topic. And I think maybe this is a very, very important shift in Supreme Court jurisprudence when it comes to religious liberty. And I want to read an excerpt from the opinion and tell you why I think this is important. Here is something that I have never read before or anything like this. This is Justice Sam Alito's majority opinion. He's writing for the majority, 7-2 decision. So this is decisive. I mean, you don't get very many 7-2 decisions at the Supreme Court level anymore, especially when it's in support of something like religious liberty. So it's overwhelming. Supreme Court, 7-2, two liberals had to say, look, that cross is not unconstitutional. But here's the thing I want you to catch, and then we're going to turn our attention to the word for a minute and then pray. But this is what Sam Alito said in his majority opinion. He says here, for some, the monument is a symbolic resting place for ancestors who never returned. For others, it is a place for the community to gather and honor all veterans and their sacrifices to our nation. For still others, it is a historical landmark. Here's the takeaway. For many of these people, destroying or defacing the cross that has stood undisturbed for nearly a century would not be neutral and would not further the ideals of respect and tolerance embodied in the First Amendment. For all these reasons, the cross does not offend the Constitution. Now, this is a remarkable paragraph, and I will tell you why. You know, up to this point, if you had a Christian monument you didn't like, there was a plaque on the wall in your school hallway, you had a Ten Commandments replica up on the hall of your school, you heard a prayer offered at your child's graduation, or you read about somebody offering a prayer at a graduation, or you read a story about 18 football players or baseball players or whatever they were getting baptized in Georgia. Is Alabama?
Football
players.
in Alabama.
Yeah, and you hear about that. All you had to do to get a court somewhere to shut that down is for one person to show up and say, look, that offended me. That offended me. And then everybody drops everything they're doing. They rush to court, and the court will snuff it out. And the court will take the grievances of the offended party as the legitimate grounds for legal action, and then they'll find in favor of the grumpy cat that complained. And that's what's significant about what Justice Alito says here, because that's always been the deal. You know, this has always bothered me. Up to this point in our jurisprudence, all you have needed to have standing, because the principle of American law is that you have to have standing before you can go into court and file a lawsuit. You and I cannot just kind of walk into a courtroom and file a lawsuit because we feel like it. You wake up in the morning and I'm going to go file a lawsuit. You can't do that. You have to be able to demonstrate that you have suffered some injury. And that's why you can go to court, because you go to court to find a redress for your grievances, find a redress for the harm that was done against you. So up until today, that's all you had to have standing. You didn't have to show any harm at all. You didn't have to show any harm to your wallet. You didn't have to show any harm to your reputation. You didn't have to show any harm to your livelihood. You didn't have to show any harm to your health. The only harm that you had to complain about is that bothered me. My feelings were hurt. I was offended by that. And then the courts have fallen all over themselves to not only allow you file suit, but to find on your behalf and punish the people that were just innocently doing what they wanted to do. Now listen to this. Again, let me read this again, because this is important. Because what Sam Alito was saying here, look, if this grievance thing is all you need to have to file a lawsuit, then Christians have exactly the same reason to go to court. Because if their feelings are hurt, and there's a lot of them get their feelings hurt, if this cross were to be taken down, there'd be a lot of them would get their feelings hurt. They wouldn't like it. They would be upset by it. So if you regressives, if you get to go to court because you don't like some expression of religious liberty, then Christians can go to court because they don't like the fact that you took away their religious liberty. That offends me. You know, I remember when I was back in Boise and we were fighting to protect the Ten Commandments monument there. The city made a stealth plan to yank that thing out of the ground and move it by the time anybody found out about it. We tumbled to it, and a group of us got together and tried to stop it. Now, the city council had scheduled to take it out of the ground on Friday. We found out about it on Tuesday night. We were trying to figure out some way that we could put a stop to it. And the guy that was leading the charge was the head of the council, the city council, who was a raging atheist. And he says the presence of that monument in our city park, that offends me. As an atheist, that offends me because I don't subscribe to what's on that park. And so he was engineering an effort to get that thing yanked out of the ground and gone. And that had been standing there in that city park for 40 years, hadn't bothered anybody. Nobody had even complained about it. Nobody had been hurt by it. Nobody had been injured by it. Nobody, from what we could tell, had even been offended by it. So anyway, the only option we had to keep that thing in the ground long enough to try to change the mind of the city council was to file a lawsuit. So we filed a lawsuit in federal court before a federal judge, and I was the plaintiff in this case, and that was the basis of my lawsuit. As a plaintiff, I said, look, the other side is saying, look, the presence of that thing bothers me. I'm here to tell you that the removal of that thing would bother me. You know, they walk by that place and they get offended because there's a Ten Commandments monument there. If they take that out of the ground, I'm going to walk by there and I'm going to be offended because it's not there. Now, the federal judge, in all of his benighted wisdom, did not accept my plea. Instead, he fined me $10,000. I get fined $10,000 by a federal judge for having the impertinence to use the same exact basis for action that the other side used. And anyway, there's a long story about that. The city actually came and tried to take my house as a result of that. That's a long story for another day. But they had a whole team of lawyers. They had something like 39 lawyers that worked for the city. They're getting paid every day to come to work and do the legal business of the city. So why did they need to come after me for attorney's fees when they've got 39 people sitting there every day to do that job? That royally teed me off, as you can see. That was 15 years ago, and I still get worked up over it. But anyway, you know, Rob's trying to fan me down here back to sanity and normalcy. But anyway, look, what Sam Alito says, look, if you deface that cross, that would not be considered neutral by many people in the community under this conceit that the government has to be neutral when it comes to religion. And Sam Alito is saying, look, for people in the community that love that cross, they appreciate it, it means something to them, that's hardly neutrality. That's not government neutrality. That's government hostility. That's government hostility to the expression of religion, tearing down a monument that means something to many people in the community. Where, Sam Alito says, is the neutrality in all of that. That's how people are going to respond. And if we're supposed to be all about respect and tolerance, if that's what America's supposed to be about, how does tearing down a cross, a symbol of Christianity, which shaped Western civilization, the values of which the United States was founded upon, how in the world does it show respect if you tear that thing down? What kind of respect does that display toward anybody? And tolerance. What kind of tolerance is that? You want everybody to be tolerant of you and all of your weirdness and all of your radical ideas. You insist on tolerance for your sexually perverse behaviors. Well, where, Sam Alito says, is the tolerance for people that simply believe in the cross, that simply like the cross, that simply like the fact that we've got a memorial in the shape of a cross to people who died to protect the liberties that we enjoy. All right, getting more worked up than Sam Alito did. I will flat out guarantee you that. Anyway, let's go to prayer before the segment is up. Daniel 5 is the reading for the day. This is where King Belshazzar sees the handwriting on the wall, literally sees the handwriting on the wall. And they call in Daniel. He didn't understand it. Nobody did. Daniel comes in and says, yeah, I can interpret that for you. I can read it. What the hand wrote on the wall is you have been weighed in the balance and found wanting, and you will die. And that night, Belteshazzar died that very night. And Daniel says, because you have not humbled yourself before the King of Heaven. You had an opportunity to learn from your father, Nebuchadnezzar. He didn't humble himself. God sent him out in the wilderness to eat grass like an ox for 7 years until he got his mind right, until he recognized that God was the King of heaven. He was the king of all the nations of the world, and Nebuchadnezzar was not. Anyway, and in fact, I'll save the prayer for when we come out of the break, because the interesting story about how Belshazzar lost his life, that was the night in which the Medes and Persians defeated the Babylonians and took control of their empire. And the way they did it, Babylon had these huge walls around the city, with a river flowing right through the middle of town. So the Persians under Cyrus, they just dammed up the river, diverted it, and they just walked in under the city walls on the dry riverbed. And they killed everybody they could find, and the Babylonians had to surrender, and the Medes and Persians became the rulers.
You then who teach others, do you not teach yourself? While you preach against stealing, do you steal? My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. Thanks to an agreement between Governor Gavin Newsom and the Democrat-controlled California legislature, 90,000 illegal aliens ages 19 to 25 will be eligible for California's Medicaid program known as Medi-Cal. If approved, the Medi-Cal expansion will take effect in January 2020 and cost $98 million annually. To help pay for it, the state will begin taxing people who don't have health insurance, similar to the Obamacare individual mandate tax penalty. So poor Californians who can't afford health insurance will be taxed to pay the medical bills for illegal aliens. Makes perfect sense to regressives.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner with Abraham Hamilton III, public policy analyst for the American Family Association.
This is Dr. Richard Land, president of Southern Evangelical Seminary. Welcome to Bringing Every Thought Captive. The abortion wars, or the struggle to defend our unborn citizens, is heating up all across America. In the midst of these debates, President Trump is once again cementing his reputation as the most pro-life president of the modern era. A few days ago, President Trump signed an executive order ending medical research by government scientists. Quote, promoting the dignity of human life from conception to natural death is one of the very top priorities of President Trump's administration, the Department of Health and Human Services said in a statement. A couple of months ago, 85 Republican members of Congress wrote a letter to Dr. Scott Gottlieb, head of the Federal Drug Administration, saying, quote, unborn children are not commodities to be bought and sold. The practice of conducting research using the body parts of children whose lives have been violently ended by abortion is abhorrent. This is a great victory in defending the unborn and pushing back against the commodification of human flesh in our country. We should not be selling the flesh of the aborted unborn, even for supposedly noble medical purposes. Such a market in human flesh cannot do other than increase the number of babies aborted. Furthermore, new technologies, such as induced pluripotent stem cells, really remove the need for all such research to proceed by using the flesh of aborted babies. Thank God for President Trump's bold stand for the lives of our unborn citizens. Elections have consequences, and President Trump is proving to be the most pro-life president of the modern era, and Mrs. Clinton would have been the most pro-abortion president of the modern era. This is Richard Land.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Howdy, and welcome back to Focal Point on American Family Radio, the home of muscular Christianity on Conservative Talk Radio. Just very quickly, a reference to one or two verses in Daniel 5 about Belshazzar, the king. He was the son of Nebuchadnezzar. He died on the night that this story took place with the handwriting on the wall. Daniel came in and read it. He interpreted it. He says what these words means: you have been weighed in the balance and found wanting, and this is the reason. You have not humbled your heart, though you knew all this from seeing what happened to your father, but you have lifted yourself against the Lord of heaven. And as I mentioned, the way the Medes and Persians, I call them the Merds and the Pesians, which we decided would be a great name for a rock band. The Merds and the Pesians. I'm going to start a 60s rock band, and that's going to be the name we're going to use. Anyway, the Medes and the Persians took control of the Babylonian Empire, and the way they did it, the Babylonians, I mean, here is Belshazzar, got the Persian armies right outside the gates, and he's partying down. In fact, what offended God the most is that he used vessels that Nebuchadnezzar had taken from the temple in Jerusalem. They'd been kept in storage because they were sacred vessels. Even Nebuchadnezzar understood that. Belshazzar said, look, those are pretty cool-looking goblets. So he brought them out of storage, and he and his guests partied down, drinking wine out of these vessels that were used in the worship of the true and living God. And so just thumbing his nose at God, and God did not take kindly to that and said, this night you are going to die. Well, the way the Medes and the Persians got into Babylon, as I mentioned, there was this river flowing through town, had gates all the way around it, no way to get in. Gates were impregnable. So the commander of the Persian troops just said, well, let's just divert the river so it flows around the city. So they created these kind of temporary cofferdams and diverted the water of this river so it stopped flowing through the heart of the city. And when the river stopped flowing, the creek bed, the river bed dried up, and they marched into the city of Babylon right under these impregnable walls. They didn't have to go over them. They didn't have to go around them. They didn't have to destroy them. They just went under them. And the Babylonians were not prepared to defend themselves, and Belshazzar dies that night in the fracas, and Cyrus becomes the ruler of the world. All right, well, let's go to prayer. Sovereign Lord, I pray for myself, for my family, for my team, for the listening audience of Focal Point, and I pray that you will keep us, all of us, individually and collectively, from becoming arrogant and hardened with pride, so that you may not have to discipline us. May we never set ourselves up against you, the Lord of heaven, but instead always acknowledge that you are the Most High God, and that you are sovereign, not only over our lives, but over all the kingdoms of men. Let us always honor you as the God who holds our life and all our ways in your hand. May your Spirit, the Spirit of the Holy God, be given to us in full measure. Through the work of your Spirit, may you grant us knowledge, insight, intelligence, wisdom, and understanding, as you did to Daniel. When you weigh us in the balance, I pray that we will not be found wanting. We pray, Lord, for our president, for all of our elected officials, that they too will recognize that you are the one who removes kings and sets up kings, and that they hold power only at your pleasure. I pray that you will keep their hearts from being lifted up against you as the Lord of heaven. We pray that you will keep their spirits from being hardened against you. We pray that you will humble the hearts of all who walk in pride by bringing them down from their positions of power. I pray that you will teach every elected official in America that the Most High God rules the kingdom of mankind and sets over it whom he will. Amen. All right. Well, we want to get our read report in before we have Jeff manning the phones. We're going to take your phone calls here in just a quick second. The number to call is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. It's Free for All Friday, so we'll kind of let you set the agenda. It's got to be something that's been in the news this past week. So there's some kind of a rover that's dead on Mars. Oh. It's been dead on Mars. They can't wake it up. I don't want phone calls on that. Okay? Got to be something that's been in the news this past week. Well, I guess that was in the news. That's how I found out about it. But I don't want calls on the dead rover on Mars. Anyway, nobody's ever overestimated the IQ of people involved in the criminal drug trafficking enterprise. And Jeff, you brought me an example of that.
Yeah, sometimes they're pretty creative, though. There's no end or shortage of drug cartels finding ways to smuggle drugs into different countries. And apparently they have been using spare tires on Ford Fusions. The spare tires. Spare tires. Okay. Spare tire. I'm sorry. And they in Canada, there's a team of guys that kind of do a quick inspection of the cars when they show up at the dealership, and they noticed that the spare tire was a little different than what usually comes in it. So they, on further inspection, they found that it was packed with methamphetamine. So they called the other Ford dealerships that were receiving Ford Fusions also, and they found 9 of the 14 vehicles that were searched were packed with methamphetamine, nearly 400 pounds of it. That's worth almost $4.5 million. So I don't know what happened. Somebody got mixed up. Maybe in Spanish the words dealer, like drug dealer, and dealership is close. I don't know.
Same, yeah.
I don't know.
It says dealership right on your advertisement. What are you talking about?
Oh, they yep. Apparently they have disbanded that method now because everybody's onto it. So they've changed things up.
You know, and these are the people, by the way, that were leading the charge against Donald Trump's tariffs on Mexico, because that was going to affect the price of cars. So I'm just teasing here, but the drug dealers say, "Man, don't put tariffs. There goes our shipment system."
Yeah, and why Ford Fusions? Is that the vehicle of choice for the cartel or something?
Well,
I don't know.
I think Ford manufactures Fusions in Mexico. That's probably the reason. All right. So Jeff is standing by to answer your phone calls. The number is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Give us a call. And remember your first name, your city and state. Be sure and give that information to Jeff. And then very briefly tell him what you would like to talk about. Make it brief, right to the point. Save your air and save your breath for the conversation with me. So once again, the phone number to call is 888-589-8840, and we'll welcome you to join our conversation today. All right, let's, while phone calls are loading up, let's get to some sound bites here. You know, there has been a lot of hoo-ha out there about polling results. You know, you see these polls that every Democrat in the field is handily beating Donald Trump, sometimes by 10 points. So everybody's out there thinking, well, Trump is toast. He's history. He's done it. He's in the archives. This is over. Look at the polling data. He's being trounced by every Democrat in the field. Now, here's Scott Rasmussen, who knows something about polling. And here's what he had to say. You know, the conventional way of doing polling now is you call people up on the phone. And here's what Scott Rasmussen says about the standard conventional way that polling is done today.
The reason you should be skeptical about any individual poll is because you never know where the sample comes from. And when you say has the industry learned lessons from 2016, I think you're not going far enough. Phone polling is either dead or just about dead at this point in time. So the entire industry is transferring to a new method of collecting data. And even with the best techniques and without any bias built into the system, it is going to be challenging to get good polling data.
All right, so Scott Rasmussen says when it comes to polls, don't believe a single thing you hear. Don't believe a single number that you read about. Polling data is dead. Using phones as a method to collect polling data, that's going the way of Jurassic Park and all that kind of stuff. Now, one deal on this, and he alluded to sampling in there. Remember when he said that? The industry, let's see, you never know where the sample comes from. So pollsters have learned that they can rig the results. They can rig the outcome of their polls by the sampling that they use. They simply oversample Democrats. You know, and if they publish it with internals, you can go deep enough into the poll and you can find what percentage of their people they polled were Republicans, what percentage were Democrats, and what percentage were independents. And you will find in almost every single solitary case that they oversample Democrats. There's a higher percentage of Democrats, usually by about 10 or 12 or 13 points, they oversample Democrats. So they call way more Democrats than they call Republicans. No wonder the Democrats wind up looking better in these polls. No wonder everybody thought Hillary was going to win on Election Day. All right, let's go to clip R2 while you're calling. Again, that number is 888-589-8840. That's the number, 888-589-8840. Give Jeff your first name, your city and state, like them both, and then what you want to talk about, and we'll get to as many calls as we can as the program develops today. Now, you know, the Democrats, I believe, are in way, 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 way more trouble than they know, than they have any idea. I mean, all the momentum is flowing away from Joe Biden so fast it'll give you a nosebleed, and there isn't anybody to step up and take their place. Now, it's my theory, just based on what I'm reading and seeing, is that the talking snake media and regressives in the political world, they're slowly coalescing behind Elizabeth Warren. That, you know, Bernie Sanders is just too old. He's too much of a whack job for them. They're trying to picture the American people looking at that guy on their TV screens, you know, every night with that angry grandpa look on his face, that frizzed out white hair, and that thing he does with his fist and his index finger. And thinking, nah, I don't think that's the guy that we want running for president. Joe Biden's got all kind of problems. We'll get into those here just a little bit in the program. And Pete Buttigieg, he was out in Hollywood. Even the big gay donors in Hollywood are not crazy about him. They like him, but they aren't convinced that he's the guy to get behind. So they're trying to gravitate towards somebody that they think has some kind of capacity to win, and they're gravitating toward Elizabeth Warren. And I hope they do select her. Elizabeth Warren, Donald Trump, I mean, that is going to be Custer at the Little Bighorn, speaking of the Indian metaphor. Sacagawea will be running into Custer, and the result of the battle is going to be exactly the reverse. But anyway, that's what's going on. So here's Bakari Sellers. He is a Democratic strategist, and here's what he has to say about the current state of play, clip R2.
You know, I don't think Democrats have much to be excited about right now. I think that if the election was today, and this may throw some people off, but if the election was today, of what the polls say, I think that Donald Trump would be elected for another 4 years. And I think the Democrats have to get that in their head and begin to focus soundly on beating the president of the United States. But I mean, I think that we're looking at polls, for example, that down in Florida, where I saw that Joe Biden was up 9 points. It's the same poll that had Andrew Gillum, my good friend, up 7 points. I mean, we can't take anything for granted, and we're not calling him Governor Gillum tonight. And so I think that one of the things Democrats have to do is begin to energize our base. One of the things the Republican Party has going for it right now is when you look in Orlando, you see a base that's so excited.
You know, and you don't see that at any Democrat event. You don't see any kind of excitement, any kind of enthusiasm, any kind of big numbers turning out. You just do not see it. And so you notice, here's Bakari Sellers. He's an experienced Democratic statist. Not even he believes in the polls. And that's one of the takeaways. I mean, it's one thing when Scott Rasmussen says don't believe the polls, but here is a Democrat. These people live and die by the polls, and it says you can't trust them because the polls in Florida had Andrew Gillum in the mayor's race against Ron DeSantis up by 7 points the day of the election. He lost. We're not calling him Governor Gillum anymore because he lost, even though the polls had him up by 7 points on election day. So Bakari Sellers, you know, so they've been taking false solace from the fact that the polling data looks so good for them. And what Bakari Sellers said, look, what I'm seeing is that Donald Trump is going to be elected for another 4 years, and Democrats had better get that in their heads. Now, he has no suggestions for how they can defeat Donald Trump. You look at that rally the turnout he had in Orlando, the excitement, the enthusiasm that's there, that's palpable for Donald Trump. The Democrats don't have anything to parallel that. So Bakari Sellers says to his fellow Democrats, be afraid, be very afraid. All right, well, let's grab some phone calls here. Yeah, I'll have to wait. Laura, I'm going to start with you coming out of the break, so hang tight. I'm running up against a break here. Man, I got so carried away talking about the merds and the pigeons that I used up all of my time. So anyway, one quick Friday story. It's a story about a woman in a wheelchair. She was upset that she wasn't getting her Big Mac fast enough, so she actually tased the McDonald's employee because he wasn't getting fast enough service. So the police were called. She's in her wheelchair. The police come. They find that she's got the taser on her. It's inside her shirt. But they can't arrest her because they've got no way to get her to the station. They've got no vehicle that can accommodate her wheelchair. So that's my tip of the day for all of you would-be criminals out there. If you're going to commit a crime, be sure you do it from a wheelchair.
The following is not an actor, but a real-life story from Trinity Debt Management.
My story begins with debt, a lot of debt, credit card debt, and I heard a commercial for Trinity. I gave them a call.
If you're in debt and you need help, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813.
When I first called, I was a little embarrassed and kind of ashamed, and I looked at the numbers and I saw how quickly that astronomical debt that was in my life would go away.
Trinity will consolidate your accounts into one easy-to-manage monthly payment, reduce your interest, and possibly improve your credit score. You'll save thousands.
What I would tell other people, please pick up the phone and call Trinity. Just let them put together a program and see how affordable and easy it is to pay off your debt.
Call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813. That's 1-800-788-1813.
The purpose of government is to secure God-given or inalienable rights to man.
America's premier historian, David Barton.
John Dickinson, who's also a signer of the Constitution, he said, an inalienable right is a right which God gave to you and which no inferior power has a right to take away.
Wall Builders Live captures the ideas of the Founding Fathers and then applies those ideas to the issues of today. Sunday morning at 11:30 Central on American Family Radio.
Hey, want to go shopping later?
Yeah, sure. Where do you want to go?
Oh, we can go to JCPenney's, Belk, Target.
Whoa, wait. I was with you until you said Target.
What's wrong with Target?
What's wrong with Target? You mean besides the fact that they have an open-door policy that lets men into women's restrooms, that Target?
Wait, what?
Exactly. As a matter of fact, before we go, grab your laptop, go to afa.net, and sign the pledge to boycott Target.
Okay, I'm on it.
So you sit down and do your budget, and you look at all your monthly costs and your bills and your income, and it seems like there's never quite enough. You know what would really help? Finding $500 a month to help balance things out. That is the typical savings, $500 a month for a family when you switch to MediShare for your health care. And when it comes to healthcare sharing ministries, MediShare is really the gold standard. It's been around for 25 years and has more than 400,000 members. It's been around so long and grown so much because it works. And whether you're single or married or have kids, this could make sitting down to do a monthly budget a lot more fun. $500 a month can more than cover a car payment or pay back loans, whatever. So join MediShare and go out to dinner to celebrate. Here's the number to call. They are incredibly kind and helpful to talk to. 833-44-BIBLE. That's 833-44-BIBLE. 833-44-BIBLE.
American Family Radio.
You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Brian Fisher.
Howdy, welcome back to Focal Point on American Family Radio, the fastest 60 minutes in conservative talk radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Let's go right to Laura in Mobile, Alabama. Laura, welcome to Focal Point. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Thanks. I've definitely enjoyed the humor today. The merge and pigeons was great, and the Sacagawea running away from custard was ideal. So,
okay, well, thank you.
You're welcome. I wanted to ask, I know on the decision that the Supreme Court made that they won on keeping the cross that we've been talking about. I was wondering, just out of curiosity, and you may not know this, but when a case like that is won, like I know that's one of the lawyer companies that is on the right and helps out a lot of Christians and so forth like that. Do they get their fees paid for by the opposing the opposing person in the lawsuit, or do those fees have to come from people that are donating and all of that?
They almost never do. It's a great question, Laura, because that's one of the reasons why a lot of schools, for instance, melt like a slice of Velveeta in a fondue pot when the Freedom from Religion Foundation says if you don't get rid of that symbol, we are going to sue the pants off of you. And they say, we cannot afford to lose, because a lot of times they know these school districts get stuck with attorney's fees. That's what I got hit with on the Ten Commandments Monument in Boise. But this is what is encouraging about the Oberlin College thing. So typically, no, Laura. Alliance Defending Freedom, they win the religious liberty case. They don't get any settlement out of that. They don't get any attorney's fees out of that. They're supported by people like you and me that care about the job they're doing. But in Oberlin, the Oberlin College case, it wasn't a religious liberty case, but it was a bakery, and the college violated their civil rights. And the college got punitively assessed $44 million in damages. The court ruled not only for the plaintiffs, but they gave them $44 million from Oberlin. Oberlin, you got to cough it up. So I'm hoping that will be a benchmark now, that Christians, when they go to court, you know, and here's Sam Alito saying you have the same amount, you have the same right to be offended anybody else does, we'll start seeing some attorney fees awards for Christian organizations from the people that are on the other side of the lawsuit. And I'll tell you, that would get their minds right in a big, fat hurry. All right, Laura, that's a great question. Appreciate that. All right, let's quickly go to Brad in Wichita. Brad, welcome to Focal Point. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
I come with a heavy heart.
Yes, sir.
Well, a couple weeks ago, I was listening to your program. You had found some kind of it's like a Saturday night live band up on a stage somewhere, and they made like a parody of a song that were making fun of the complainers on the I guess the regressive side about the political situation and everything, how they're griping and complaining and all that. I don't know if you remember that.
You might be talking about that country music song.
Yeah,
shut up about politics. That song.
Yep. You do know they use a swear word in there twice, right?
There was a swear word in there twice.
You might want to listen to that again.
Yeah, well, we didn't. We listened real carefully to that kind of stuff, and we didn't catch that. Now there is. I know there's a profanity in the rest of the song. That's why we only played that snippet. But you might be right. Maybe something might have got past us, and that would be on us, because we try to be real careful about that stuff.
Yeah, it'd be the swear word instead of griping and complaining. You know, like you're itching. With a B in front of it.
Yeah.
Said that twice.
All right. Well, I guess we missed that, Brad. Listen, I appreciate you calling our attention to it, and I flat out guarantee you we will be much more careful moving forward. All right. Thank you, Brad. Appreciate that. Let's go to Susan in South Carolina. Susan, welcome. What's on your mind?
Hi.
Hi.
I would just like for you to make some comments about something I saw on Google today about in Alaska, the people having that satanic prayer.
Yes.
That was very disturbing.
Yeah.
And what can we do? What can we do?
Well, I'll tell you right now, Susan, there's a very simple solution to that kind of thing happening. It's very simple, but our courts don't see it. The Supreme Court doesn't get it yet. Even people on our side, even religious conservatives, Christian conservatives, don't get this yet. There's this profound misunderstanding about the First Amendment. When the founders used the word religion in the First Amendment, they were talking about Christianity and the different denominations of Christianity. You can't pick one of those and make it the official church. You can't prohibit the free exercise of the Christian religion. That's all they were talking about. The only thing they were talking about was Christianity. So the bottom line, these are the people that put together the First Amendment. Joseph Story, who wrote the first eminent history of the Constitution, said this very clearly. Their objective wasn't to advance Mohammedanism or Judaism or atheism or anything else. They were only trying to prevent rivalry among the Christian denominations. Bottom line is Christianity is the only religion, quote unquote, that has First Amendment rights. Nobody else does. No other religion has First Amendment rights. Only Christianity has First Amendment rights. That was what the founders were talking about. That's what they intended. So the reality is everybody's bending over backwards to let people like Satanists do invocations at these government. They have no right to do an invocation. But we're bending over backwards in the interest of trying to be fair and Let's be open to everybody, and the Constitution says everybody's got the same freedom of religion. Absolutely not true. There is no other religion that can claim First Amendment protections other than Christianity. Islam can't, Confucianism can't, atheism can't, but we haven't figured that out yet. And I've been saying this for years. Until we do, we are at the mercy of the atheists and the Satanists, because they can wedge their agenda until we understand that only Christians have First Amendment rights. We are going to be overrun by Satanists in the name of fairness, in the name of equality, in the name of tolerance. So we've got to get our minds right. If the judges had their minds right, then they would say to the Satanists in Alaska, well, you have no right to give that invocation. If they want to let you do it, that's fine. That's up to them. But you can't bring a First Amendment complaint about that to us and get any attention from us whatsoever. All right, Susan, I appreciate the question. That is a good one. Let's grab a call from Donnie in Clovis, New Mexico. Donnie, by the way, I'm going to be in Clovis, New Mexico at the end of September. More information coming as we move closer. Hopefully we'll be able to come to that event. Anyway, talk to me. What's on your mind?
Well, I am blind, and I try to listen to as many radio preachers as I can, and I hear quite a few of them, but I never hear them complaining about the political left, and I never hear them complaining or howling and screeching against the religious left, which would a lot of that would be in the new apostolic Reformation, which is anti-Jewish and all for fake miracles and stuff like that. I never hear preachers howling against these things. And I'm curious about what you think about that. Our good preachers, our biggest preachers, if they had the kind of spines, I mean, if the preachers 300 years ago had their spines, there never would have been a Revolutionary War.
I mean, if they'd had the same kind of backbone that these radio preachers have today. So.
Yeah, there never would have been a Revolutionary War. They would just cave in and go along.
I gotcha. Well, and somehow I think that's the problem. I've been reading through Daniel about, how Daniel and his three friends said, look, we don't care what you do to us. We are going to stand for the truth. We're going to stand for the truth about the living God, and we don't care what you can throw us in the furnace. That's fine. But and our God's able to save us. But even if you don't, we're not going to bow down before you. We're not going to do it. And that's what you need. You need that from radio preachers and everybody else. And I agree. I think radio preachers, have a tendency that a lot of preachers do, and that's just to make their audience feel good. A lot of preachers think that their job is to just make people feel good. And there's nothing wrong with that, with making people feel good. You want them to be encouraged. You want them to be emboldened. You want them to walk out of your service with a sense of hope that you've given them from the Word of God. But sometimes you not only have to comfort the afflicted, sometimes you have to afflict the comfortable. And a lot of these preachers are afraid to do that. It has to do with donations. They don't want to take a chance turning off some of the wallets in their listening audience and all that kind of stuff. And I agree with you, Donnie. It is a shame. It's unfortunate. So I appreciate the call. Thank you for that, Donnie. Let's go to Gail, our good friend Gail in Dyersburg, Tennessee. Gail, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Well, I watched the interview with Stephanopoulos interviewing President Trump.
Uh-huh.
They were in the Beast, okay, his car, okay, the president's automobile. And I noticed that Stephanopoulos had a shoulder harness on, but our president did not. Okay, in some of the interview, the automobile is sitting still. But in other parts, they are moving. Still, President Trump does not have a seatbelt on. I don't know if he has just a lap belt, but usually, you have your shoulder harness. My husband goes, leave it to you to pick up on that.
Gail, your husband took the words right out of my mouth. Anyway, go ahead and finish your thought.
Okay, but it is the law. And of course, what he had to say was more important to me than whether he had a seatbelt on or not.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I just thought, it was kind of unusual. Here we've got little Steffi, in a seatbelt.
Right,
he probably needed a booster seat.
Well, yeah. And I think part of what's going on there is, you're right that Trump is riding in the Beast. And when he's in the Beast, he's in a caravan. So you've got vehicles out in front of them, and that beast, it's got like armor-plated sides. You can't penetrate that thing with an RPG. So you've got vehicles behind him and vehicles in front of him. If the first car in that convoy runs into something, the car behind it's going to run into the first car, and the whole thing is going to stop, and whoever's driving the beast is going to have plenty of time to come to a stop. So I think the reality is Donald Trump is in the rare position of probably being in a vehicle that's virtually invulnerable to him being tossed out of his seat by some kind of collision. So, but anyway, Gail, your comment, your observation is noted, and I'm going to pass it along to the Seatbelt Safety Commission of the United States of America.
But you're missing the point. It's the law. Click it or kick it here in Tennessee.
Yeah, well, there you go. Well, maybe they got exceptions for the beast. Who knows? Okay, Gail, I'll tell you what. If President Trump comes to Tennessee, I want you watching for this, and you report back to us if he breaks the law in Tennessee, and we will report it to the American public. All right, Gail, listen, I appreciate the call. Thank you for that. All right, let me play a couple of sound bites before we're done here today. Here is a black legislator, this is an African-American legislator. This is the pro-abortion party. Remember, a high percentage of blacks are aborted before they ever draw their first breath. I mean, it's genocide against the black community in the abortion industry. By the way, that Planned Parenthood clinic in Missouri, the state licensing board denied them approval for their license to keep doing abortions. So they should be out of business. They should be shut down by close of business today. But judges just keep extending them, keep giving them life. I mean, there's only one in Mississippi. That thing is operating against the law. Should have been shut down years ago, but federal judges keep saying, no, we're not going to let you do it. But anyway, here is Louisiana Democratic Representative Katrina Jackson. Let's listen to her.
I tell people in my state when they ask me, why are you a black female Democrat fighting for life? I say, because I'm a Christian first. And then I tell them that Proverbs say God hates the shedding of innocent blood. There's no blood more innocent than an unborn child who's never sinned, who never knew sin. And so for them, we will continue together, regardless of being Democrat, Republican, black, white, male or female, we will fight.
We will fight for life. That's the cheer and the chant that she organized. Really good stuff.
And she's not with the Democrat Party in general because they just voted for the 60th time to refuse care for babies that are born alive.
Yeah,
that was yesterday.
What Republicans are trying to do is get a bill passed that would require medical care to be given to a baby that survives an abortion. They won't do it.
Nope,
So,
60th time. Actually,
60 times.
62 times in total because they've done it twice in the Senate as well.
All right, let's close with Claire McCaskill. This is from a leader in the Party of Tolerance, the Party of Respect. Donald Trump is an icky person because he calls people names. Here's Claire McCaskill, clip 5.
Biden is trying to convey that he can work with really creepy, stinky people. And by the way, Cory Booker worked with Jeff Sessions, and AOC is working with Ted Cruz. I mean, these are pretty stinky, creepy people themselves, right?
All right. So, Claire McCaskill from the party that think it's bad to call people names like Sleepy Joe, she's out there calling people stinky and creepy. And not just once, but repeatedly. All right, Claire, maybe that has something to do with the fact that you are actually now out of office. Well, that's it for this week. Don't forget to bow low before God, stand tall before man, stand in the gap where God has placed you. Never forget, we're fighting winnable war. See you on Monday.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
American Family Coffee is coffee with a cause. Not only is it a delicious way to start your day, but it can also wake you up to the idea of supporting the American Family Association through a product you'd normally buy anyway. Choose from morning blend, evening blend, and everything in between. Get your American Family Coffee and support the American Family Association at afastore.net.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry.